Thank you for that. Uptown Boyz, that's where you can go to find the singers there at Uptown Boyz. It's a very specific thing because there are other Uptown Boys in the world. So please find them on Facebook, find them on Instagram. They also featured a brother from Lakota country named Morgan Valandra. And I want to send a sincere gratitude to everybody at Uptown Boyz, including Mary, who runs the social media. And I just want you to know, I sent you a message. I'm hoping to share everything that you are doing. I know that you are located in Washington, D.C., and I certainly want people out there to know if you need singers, if you need the drum, please hit up the Uptown Boyz. And everybody who's tuning in, thank you so much for hanging on. I know we try to start at the same time every time, but we are in a different studio. Our team is hard at work. We even have Leonard Peltier podcast in the house, Leonard_pod. Please check them out. They're one of our in-kind sponsors. And we have a very special lineup for you tonight. And I want to stay true to time because we told Leonard Peltier's main counsel, his name is Kevin H. Sharp. That's also his Twitter handle, at Kevin H. Sharp. He is a former federal judge, and he has joined the campaign for Leonard Peltier's clemency. As you know, we are in Washington, D.C., and we're doing everything we can on the ground to assist the International Leonard Peltier Defense Committee with their actions on the National Mall, at the U.S. Capitol, in front of the White House, wherever they may go. That includes the Leonard Peltier Freedom Riders, the horse riders. So we are going to be joined by Kevin H. Sharp in just a very quick moment here. And after that, we'll hear from Bruce Ellison. As you know, he is a long-standing ally and advocate of Lakota country, of indigenous country. He's defended many people who face political imprisonment from the United States. So we're going to be happy to catch up with Bruce. And after that, we'll share a little bit more about what we have been up to on the ground from the International Leonard Peltier Defense Committee and their new executive director, Carol Gokee. I just want to say shout out to Paulette. I never know how to pronounce your last name, Paulette. Paulette Detay, something like that. It's very, very French. She is the most recent former executive director, and she is responsible for bringing me down to Coleman Prison to visit Leonard Peltier in person. It is something that has changed my life, and so I'm grateful to be working with the Leonard Peltier Defense Committee. To this day, 46 years later, we are still trying to free Leonard Peltier. After I'm able to talk about what we've been doing on the ground, I'll update you about something we were able to catch at the National Museum of the American Indian, the Native American Veterans Memorial. It's right next to the museum, the Indigenous Museum. I know that's crazy to say that they have a museum for us out here, folks. I try to go up in there and get all our stuff back, but didn't work out too well today. But there is an effort to rescind the 20 medals of honor that were given for cowardly, horrific conduct against women and children at Wounded Knee in 1890. So there was a host of survivors, a host of descendants who were there today to usher in this new era. And that also included Congresswoman, the only Native Congresswoman, Sharice Davids. That also included a Native Hawaiian, an indigenous Hawaiian from the 2nd District in Hawaii, and his name, I can't pronounce it correctly, but it's Ka'ila'i Kahele, something like that. And I apologize for butchering that from one Native to another. I kind of know that struggle, but that's our lineup for you tonight. And after we finish with Judge Kevin Sharp, then hopefully I'm going to be joined by Gene Roach, who's in the building. And of course, Gene is a board member for the International Leonard Peltier Defense Committee, as well as its new executive director, Carol Gokee. So that's our show tonight. Please thank all of you for tuning in. Please share our stream. I know that it seems like a bitty gesture, but it matters a lot. Every like, share, and comment is important, whether you're tuned in on YouTube, whether you're tuned in on Facebook, which is where we stream right now. Once again, tune into our podcast to catch the full episodes. Go to anchor.fm/cut to the chase. Anyhow, without further ado, I do want to bring on Kevin H. Sharp so we can take a journey and contextualize why there are horse riders here who rode thousands of miles to call for Leonard Peltier's clemency, why Gene Roach and Mike and a whole bus full of allies, a bus full of indigenous people and allies have come to the National Mall and were there every day to call for Leonard's clemency. So, Judge, I'd like you, if you could, just to introduce yourself and tell us how you got involved with Leonard Peltier's clemency.
Yeah, thank you, Chase. I appreciate you giving me time here today and talking about Leonard, because there is a segment of the population that knows that story, but fewer and fewer people are alive who were there and really understand this story. I tell you, I didn't know it initially. I stepped down from the bench, appointed by President Obama and confirmed by the Senate in 2011. And I only stayed on the bench for 6 years. They're lifetime appointments, but I came off the bench, concerned about the criminal justice system, and the lack of an emphasis on the justice part of that. And so when I stepped down, because of some issues I had with mandatory minimums and sentencings, I stepped down and I started working on clemency and clemency reform, sentencing reform issues. And I had an opportunity to work with Kim Kardashian and Van Jones on some of those issues, as well as specific clemency requests. Ultimately, we were able to get clemency granted for a young man named Chris Young, who I sentenced to life in prison, 2 life sentences on nonviolent drug offenses. And Kim had seen that, came on board and advocated for clemency for Chris. As part of that, supporters of Leonard's who had seen that and thought that maybe I would have bring something new and fresh to the campaign to get relief for Leonard, wrote to me. And a lawyer out of Texas, Logan Moss, sent me this package of material, and I'm looking through it, and I realized I did not know this story. He sends me trial transcripts, he sends me newspaper articles, he sends me paintings and photographs of that era. And I sat down and just became, first of all, engrossed in the story, but second, then outraged by what I learned. And that's what brought me in. You know, part of my adult life has been spent in service of this country and in defense of our Constitution. Out of high school, I joined the military, swore to support and defend the Constitution. And so I spent 4 years in the Navy, decided to go to law school, came out, went to community college, and then a 4-year college, ultimately got into Vanderbilt's law school. And shortly thereafter, I went to work for Congress as a lawyer for the legislative branch. So, you know, now I'd worked in 2 branches, came back out, practiced law for a while, was selected by the Obama White House for an open seat in the Middle District of Tennessee in the federal courts here. And then for a 3rd time, I took an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. When I stepped down and really started digging into Leonard Peltier's story, I was horrified and angry at what I saw as just a complete disregard for the Constitution by the very people who had also taken a similar oath to support and defend the Constitution. And that outraged me. And so I agreed to come on board and work for Leonard's freedom pro bono. My firm was kind enough to give me that time. And since then, others in my firm have come on board because they want to help. And so we're all working on clemency for Leonard.
Wow. Thank you for that, Judge. I know that I was born into the side of this saga, which suffered horrific crimes during the 1970s. That we now know, now it's accepted in pop culture. I mean, with films like Judas and the Black Messiah, exposing COINTELPRO's, you know, anti-communism atrocities and all of that propaganda. We now know that the FBI is in a different state. I wouldn't exactly call it vulnerable, but people are questioning the integrity of that agency's activities with specific regard to Indian country and Leonard Peltier. Now, when you say you read the case materials and you kind of apprised yourself, informed yourself of what has been going on, and you were appalled. That is how I felt when I read In the Spirit of Crazy Horse when I was 18 years old. But I want to ask you, you know, what in Leonard's case are the legal reasons that he should be granted clemency, and what kind of drove you, what angered you, and what appalled you about his case that led you to join the cause?
You know, it's almost, you talk about the book In the Spirit of Crazy Horse. that's an 800, 900 page book. I've got it back here. We can check. That book deals with all of them. It's almost impossible to start picking things out. There were so many problems with that, but you can't just, and this is a mistake that people make by looking at this and saying, okay, let's look at a shootout that happened on June 26, 1975. You can't do that. You could start there and still have a multitude of constitutional violations, but you can't really understand it unless you go back hundreds of years.
True.
And come forward and go, okay, how did we get here? It's why Judge Haney, one of the judges on the Eighth Circuit who dealt with his appeal, said the government has to take responsibility for what happened there. There was context to that. Now, when you get to the actual shootout, although it's even hard to talk about it without at least going back to the Reign of Terror days, right? You can just take the first few years, really everything from the Trail of Broken Treaties through the occupation of and the protests at Wounded Knee in 1973. If you take it from there, you see what's about to happen. Everyone should have known what was going to happen. The government was fueling what was going to happen. The FBI picked sides between the Dick Wilson faction and those who wanted to continue with a traditional life. They chose sides. And then, much like what we know in Vietnam, then they start funding, and they're providing intelligence, and they're providing ammunition, and they're providing money to the side that they want to win. And then it ultimately ends up in this kind of powder keg. And so when those two agents pull onto the Jumping Bull Ranch on that day, they don't just pull up in their cars with nothing there. They pull up with this history of tension and of violations by the United States government, not all just the FBI. And so that's all the baggage that they're, are in those unmarked cars as they pull up onto the Jumping Bull Ranch. And a firefight was inevitable. Who started it? Nobody knows. Who fired the first shot? Nobody knows. Who shot the agents? Nobody knows. Who shot Joe Stutz? Somebody knows, but they never bothered to try to find out.
True. You know what? This is heavy material, and I want to say that this is part one of a series. We were fortunate enough to nab you tonight, Judge, and I do appreciate that. But 40 minutes, 30 minutes, as we know, is not enough time to dive deep into that context, because this is the story of our lives. Just listening to you talk, listening to how you uphold the integrity of the United States Constitution, which we all know is a very organic document as of January 6th, 2021 in the US Capitol. Everything that went down there and all the fallout that we're experiencing politically and so forth, for you to now carry the cause for clemency, because Leonard Peltier, as of today, as of tomorrow, will have been on the run and or imprisoned for 46 years. And you need to start with the context, because you have to understand that there was an instigated environment that caused a powder keg.
Right.
And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate for the families of those men in the FBI, Ron Williams and Jack Kohler. We mean no malice to that agency and the good people in it. But we never get to mention the Reign of Terror and the actual 69 people that the FBI said, yes, they were murdered and we did not investigate. And the story doesn't end there. And I would like to give you an opportunity, because I know there's also more than you can shake a stick at that is wrong with what the prosecution, the Department of Justice, the FBI, their conduct during the case. So I want to turn it back to you, Judge.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks. Right. And it's hard for me. There's so much context and all the things that you were just talking about to understand why everyone is there at that moment in history. And you really got to understand 1975, right? There are too many things that have to happen to really understand it. Too many layers to really understand what happened there. But once it happens, it becomes not a quest for the government to find out what happened. It becomes a quest for them to convict. And you've got 3 members of AIM who were there. Those are the only 3 that are indicted. And they do that by intimidating what were then young boys, and Orrin Brown and Wish Draper, and the other young boy that was with them, right? You intimidate them. You know, they're busting into houses up on the ranch. These are people's homes, and ransacking the places. They're not trying to figure out what happened. They're seeking revenge. Mm-hmm. And look, I worked with the FBI and the U.S. Marshal Service. They're great guys and men and women who work for those agencies, as I experienced them. Mm-hmm. But that's not what was happening in Pine Ridge in 1970, in the 1970s, but particularly in 1975. And so they start intimidating witnesses. They ultimately hide exculpatory evidence, a ballistics test that shows the world that it wasn't Leonard Peltier who shot these agents. Right there, they ultimately get Myrtle Pourbaix to just absolute lie, and they knew it because it took them 3 affidavits to get her story straight. They knew they were all lies. They put those words in her mouth, not because they wanted to seek justice, but because they wanted to convict someone. And when Leonard is in Canada, and the Canadian government won't extradite him right away, and so Robideau and Butler are tried separately and acquitted based on self-defense, and they get that because the judge in that case allows the defense to put in evidence of the Reign of Terror, allows the defense to put in evidence of the FBI's misconduct. When Norman Brown gets on the stand and says, "Look, what I told you early on wasn't true, and the only reason I said that is because the FBI threatened my life and threatened the life of my mother, and physically pushing him around in order to get him to say what they wanted to say." When he says that on the stand, well, all of a sudden the government's case falls apart, and they're acquitted based on self-defense. So now, and there are internal FBI memos that confirm this, they now realize we're not going to get a conviction, and which is what they care about, and the U.S. Attorney's Office. We're not going to get a conviction unless we bring the full resources of the United States government onto Leonard Peltier to convict Leonard Peltier. That's what they cared about. And the first thing they needed to do was get him back from Canada. Canada wouldn't extradite him because you don't have any evidence that he shot anybody. So they get the affidavit of Myrtle Pourbaix, who ultimately they threaten and intimidate and get her to say, "I'm Leonard's girlfriend. I was there that day. I saw him do it." Well, Myrtle Pourbaix never met Leonard Peltier. And the only reason she said those things was because they threatened to take her child away from her. She had a young daughter at the time. And so she said whatever she needed to say. Now, the interesting thing, I've kind of skipped this part, was that the trial is no longer in front of the original judge who had it. The case has been transferred to Fargo with a different judge in a different district. Now, I never heard of that. I sat on the bench as a federal judge. Cases just didn't disappear.
Right.
The way criminal cases are set up, and I know you know this, Chase, but those listening may not understand this, where you have multiple defendants in the same case, you have one case number. And so it might be, here in the Middle District, it might say 20 telling you what year, CR telling you it's a criminal case, dash 1000, telling you it's the 1000th case, dash 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 might be the defendants. So the case stays together. How 1 and 2 get tried, and then 3 is severed off and sent to another district, who knows? Well, somebody knows. The FBI knows. The judge who took the case knows. Not the judge who lost the case, who has no idea why they took it from him. And I haven't been able to find an order transferring that case.
Wow.
It just moves. And there are documents of FBI notes having met with the judge who would ultimately get the case in Fargo. Not ex parte because he doesn't have the case yet, but they're meeting with him to talk about the case. Now he makes different evidentiary rulings, not going to let in any issues of FBI misconduct because it says the FBI is not on trial. Sure they were. They had to be. They may not have been charged, but their conduct certainly is part of it and has to be on trial. Well, the Myrtle Poorbear affidavits get Leonard back into this country improperly, but there's no remedy for that, having lied to another country to get a defendant extradited. So, government's reaction is, "Oh, sorry about that. We'll apologize rather than ask permission and try and do this the right way." And then the judge doesn't let in the evidence of the threatened and intimidated witnesses. The government, the judge also doesn't let them, the defense, examine Myrtle Poorbear. She's out. And the FBI agent who conducted the ballistics test from the stand says, shell casing test, I couldn't do the best test possible. I did shell casing, same weapon. Well, he had done it. That firing pin test absolutely had been done and showed it wasn't Leonard's weapon. And their whole case against Leonard was, here's the shell. This is it. This piece of evidence ties that man to this killing, and it was a lie. That was their whole theory. They had to change that theory on appeal because now it became clear you withheld exculpatory evidence. So they had to say, well, we also argued aiding and abetting. And so the conviction gets upheld. Now that's something that people don't understand about appeals. The whole system is set up to uphold jury verdicts. And I understand there's a reasoning behind that. But the system is stacked to uphold jury verdicts. And so when they change their theory, as far as the court's concerned, no harm, no foul.
What the heck? How, you know what? A lot of, you heard that there from Judge Kevin Sharp, former Judge Kevin Sharp. He is now, if you're just tuning in, he is now the lead counsel for Leonard Peltier's clemency campaign, which is ongoing since as long as Leonard Peltier has been in prison, which is 44 years. Tomorrow is the 46th anniversary of the events on the Pine Ridge Reservation that led to Leonard Peltier being politically imprisoned. Now, Judge Kevin H. Sharp on Twitter, please find him. Please share the stream, continue the comments. I'm reading them as we are going along. And it's clear to me that somebody like Judge Sharp is able to add an element to Leonard's clemency campaign that we have not seen in a while. And I haven't been part and parcel to the International Leonard Peltier Defense Committee that long. I barely visited Leonard 2 years ago. And like I said, it changed my life. But you just heard some of the reasons, including co-defendants of Leonard, Dino Butler and Bob Robidoux, were acquitted on self-defense theory, and also they were allowed to present evidence of the reign of terror.
So you have to ask yourself, Chase, who was Leonard supposed to have aided and abetted?
There's so many holes in this shit.
There's no crime. There's no crime. They were basically now the prosecutor, the assistant U.S. attorney, was asked that question. Who did he aid and abet? And he said, I don't know, maybe himself. Now, anyone, you don't have to have a law degree to know that you can't aid and abet yourself. That's ridiculous. And that an assistant U.S. attorney would even make such a claim is ridiculous. There's no reason that Leonard should be sitting in prison 46 years later. It's outrageous.
It's a legal impossibility for somebody.
It's a legal impossibility to aid and abet yourself, but that's their theory.
So I know, I was encouraged when Kim Kardashian and Jared Kushner and President Trump were exonerating people, they were pardoning people, and it turned out that it might have been some unsavory characters in there. Nobody who deserved it, nobody was in the same situation as Leonard Peltier, who deserved to be out of prison for all of those reasons that you've stated. It sounds like these agencies committed crimes in order to take out their frustration and their personal vendetta, because I understand there are 2 officers that are down as part of this, but
right.
Leonard did not get his day in court. And there are a lot of people, 55 members of Congress, that's senators and Congress folk, including Nancy Pelosi, including Deb Haaland, including Raul Grijalva, the late Senator Inouye, and a former FBI agent, Don Edwards, who is also a congressional rep, and not to mention the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu.
Chase, don't forget about this. The U.S. attorney who came in on Leonard's case on the post-trial motions and the habeas petitions is also advocating for Leonard's release. James Reynolds was the U.S. attorney at the time. James Reynolds in 2017 and continues to this day to say enough is enough. We did things, he being the U.S. attorney's office, did things in that case that we should not have. We never proved anything. And again, this is the U.S. attorney's office talking. We never proved Leonard Peltier did anything other than be there. And I get that being there under the law can be enough. But what they did to try and get a conviction is violate the Constitution. He didn't get a fair trial. And you certainly don't sit in prison for 46 years because you were there. Who shot these agents? I don't know. Maybe the people in the red pickup truck they were following, which also at trial, they changed the idea that this is a red pickup truck to the red and white, Scout. Well, that's ridiculous. You're just changing the facts so that you can get a conviction, right? That's crazy.
They're doing it in the middle of the game,
right? It makes my head explode. That's what they do. They just change the facts so that they can convict anyone, and he's the last man standing. And
that is a lot of
tears going down. That's basically what happened.
That's a lot of holes in the ship there, Judge.
Oh my God.
We just keep uncovering more. And so we will run all that back. But for now, I know that you have given us some of your time tonight, and I want to invite you on to at least maybe 3 more sessions at a minimum, because maybe we can design them, cover different things in each one. But I wanted people to get a sense of who you are, why you've joined the cause for clemency. We are very, very grateful that you have. We know there's always 2-3 sides to every story, and we know that the United States government the foundations are permeable right now. Things are tenable. We are beginning to discover how strong and under what circumstances the fabric of our country is woven together, how strong our social contract is with each other. And we've got to stay strong, because there are enemies of the United States, and there are those who want to push hate, racism, division, and fear on our country. and we cannot allow it. And Leonard Peltier is part of that story. Judge, I want to give you some
He is
opportunity to
very-
make closing comments here.
Yeah, thank you. I hate that I've got to go, and because this case drives me crazy that we're still here talking about it 46 years later. It just makes my head want to explode that we're still doing this. And there's so many pieces to it. We didn't even talk about the admitted racist on the jury. So remind me that let's talk about that next time. You had a juror who said, "Yeah, I'm biased against Indians."
Wow.
What? I go to the end to go, surely this woman is not still on the jury voting guilty, and she sure is. Right, that couldn't happen today. It wouldn't happen today. But the other thing, just to follow up on what you said and talking about all those broader issues, that you can't move on. You're not going to put it behind you, but you can't move on until people admit what happened, and until people are willing to talk honestly. Mm-hmm. And now you're back to the issues that, all of that context that put us on Pine Ridge in 1975. But until you're willing to address all of that and talk about it in an honest way, you can't deal with it. We can't ignore it and expect it to go away. It's not. We've got to talk about it. We've got to talk about the misconduct. We've got to talk about the misconduct within the FBI that we all know about, COINTELPRO being the most outrageous of them. We've got to talk about the misconduct within the U.S. Attorney's Office. Let's just do that and put that over here. And now we can move on. And now we can have a system that strives towards justice, not a system that strives towards convictions. Justice is to be what this is about. And until we can all admit what happened, talk about it honestly, we can't get there. And we have to get there, or it's going to keep, the divisions between us are going to get wider and wider until we can't get back.
Aho, thank you for that, Judge, and thank you for joining us tonight. Again, this is
thank you,
former Judge Kevin H. Sharp. Please find him on Twitter and send him a little thank you. Sincerely and genuinely, thank you for joining the cause for clemency, Judge, and I look forward to speaking with you again.
Yeah, let's do this again, because you just got me wound up, and now I've got to run. So
okay.
Sorry about that, but thank you for having me on, Chase. And thanks everybody who's listening out there and cares about Leonard. The president cares what people think.
Yes.
And so we have to let him know. We have to let our politicians know what we think about this. And it's time to stop it. You can't fix it because it's been too long, but you can stop it and let Leonard go home.
Thank you. So there you have it. That is Judge Kevin H. Sharp. That's the first time I've got to talk on screen with him. I was aware that he joined the International Leonard Peltier Defense Committee as Leonard Peltier's lead counsel. And it sounds like he has the right experience, the right network to make sure that Leonard Peltier's name is not forgotten, that there is consistent advocacy, because I know that Leonard Peltier is in Coleman prison right now. He's on lockdown. I've spoken with Carol Gokee, the new executive director, who speaks with him whenever he can call. He's under the rules of the Bureau of Prisons. So if they're on lockdown, sometimes Leonard cannot call out. But and I don't pretend to understand what it's like to be in Leonard's situation, but I know what it's like to be behind bars and to have your only links to the outside world cut off. Leonard is strong. Leonard is unconquerable, but he needs to be free. And I want to thank Kevin Sharp. Please look him up. If you're on Twitter, Kevin H. Sharp. Please check him out. And also Leonard Peltier podcast at Leonard_POD. Find them on Twitter, find them on Instagram. They also have interviews that you need to listen to. If you're somebody who is taking special interest in Leonard Peltier, if you're somebody who this might be the first time that you've heard about United States political prisoner, Leonard Peltier. Please link up with us, learn more. We are pushing as hard as we can, calling for clemency, calling for Americans to honor our Constitution, their Constitution, honor the treaties, right the wrongs that happened to put Leonard Peltier in prison. So with that, I want to roll in an interview that we did with Bruce Ellison. Many of you know who Bruce Ellison is. He was also on the Wounded Knee liberation trials, you know, the siege at Wounded Knee that lasted 71 days. Many people were charged because of that stance, including Leonard Crowdog, rest in power, everlasting, including every single person that gave of themselves. They were also charged, and Bruce Ellison was there to defend them, as was William Kunstler, Ken Tilson, and even Danny Sheehan was involved in the Wounded Knee trials. So I want to thank them. But with that, let's please stick around. This Bruce Ellison will last about 11 minutes. But on the other side of that, we're hoping to have live in the studio Gene Roach and Carol Gokee. So we've got something special lined up for you tonight. Stick with us. We know you could be anywhere you want to be on a Friday night, but stay right here because we are going to tell you why Leonard Peltier deserves clemency and continue to take a dive into that journey. Thank you.
This was about the real life future existence of people whom we were basically taught in school no longer existed, and who because of the legitimacy of their grievances, the government wanted to silence as quickly as possible. And of course Leonard became part of that. Leonard Peltier is one of the, you know, whether we're talking about the black movement, brown movement, indigenous movement, Leonard Peltier is one of the last people in prison from that time period. So many activists have been released on the same situation. They were convicted of murder of some law enforcement officer based largely on fabricated evidence. As the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights later noted, the government was using the criminal justice system, both the federal and state, as a means of trying to destroy the movement by that point. That was one of their tactics. And so there were lots of arrests, you know, going back to Wounded Knee. As there was later testimony at one of the trials, what they could say is that bullets started going through their home, and then they looked out and they saw these two guys down by a couple of cars who were firing a rifle and a handgun at them. They had infant children who were in the home when the bullets started going through. In their house later, because I got there after the firefight and I had a chance to look at it, the FBI, when they assaulted the homes, they literally ripped that entire little cabin with automatic weapons fire. And I found a doll that was inside. It must have been one of Angie and Ivis's kids' dolls. And it had a bullet hole in each breast, one in the pubic area and one in the head, forehead. And it just kind of reflected the attitude, you know, of what we were dealing with. And interestingly enough, there was a legal theory that says that if the government engages in actions to either bring about an incident that causes a prosecution, like they did because they brought about the firefight, or acts so outrageously in the prosecution of a person that it shocks the conscience, the prosecution has to be dismissed. Right before trial started, the government tried to take Bob Robity's fingerprints for the third time, and Bob said, "I want to call my lawyer." And so the reaction of the sheriff's department was to beat him up. And that became something that very much interested the judge, what was going on. And then as things start, you know, he became educated during the process. So to the extent that we were allowed to subpoena the FBI director, who was a very important witness on the aspect of self-defense, we were able to because the government's theory at the trial was that Dino Butler, Bob Robidoux, and Leonard Peltier acted together, but they aided and abetted whoever had killed the agents. We were allowed to present substantial evidence as to the climate of fear and terror that existed on the reservation. You know, once the decision was made to put the full prosecutor weight of the federal government against Leonard Peltier, suddenly Judge McManus was replaced by a judge up in North Dakota. Nobody filed a motion to move the judge, change the judge. Judge McManus didn't say, I'm not doing this anymore. In fact, he was already expecting to try Peltier. We even had a couple of pretrial hearings in front of Judge McManus. But suddenly the case gets shifted administratively to Paul Benson up in Fargo, North Dakota, who is very much the opposite of Judge McManus. He had already made up his mind about everything and wasn't even willing to listen to anything that might put a question in the propriety of the FBI's actions. As he said one time, the FBI's not on trial here. Oh, yes, they were. But he did his best and substantially succeeded in making that not the case. He helped to contribute to the climate of fear and terror that was in the courtroom, in part because of, well, I mean, we had 22 marshals in both Cedar Rapids courtroom and in the Fargo courtroom, but it was a much more menacing feeling situation in the Fargo courtroom. And one of the things in the creation of this climate of fear and terror was that in Cedar Rapids, the jury got to go home to their families every night. 6-week trial, it's a long time. In Fargo, they were immediately sequestered, which meant that they couldn't go home. They stayed in a hotel. They were taken to the hotel for lunch every day. And we heard a rumor, which I then went out to watch and see what was the case. And I went to the back of the courthouse for the lunch break. The school bus pulled up where all the windows were taped so you couldn't see in or out. And that was supposedly to prevent the jurors from being shot at by snipers. That wouldn't scare them. There was a sniper team on the roof, very obviously. And all of a sudden the doors burst open in the back of the courthouse. And a team of marshals fanned around the bus. The door opened and the jurors were literally pushed into the bus as fast as they could. Like if they spent a second more, they would suffer harm. You can't do that for 6 weeks and not have a sense of who are your protectors and who is the threat, and have that not affect what your decision making is going to be. Dealing with a judge with a predetermined attitude meant that Leonard Peltier could not possibly have and did not have a fair trial. And then you get to the appeal, right, where you get 3 judges. One of the first things that happens is one of the 3 judges is officially nominated to be the next FBI director. That judge is told that the FBI has information that AIM is looking to kidnap his children. And so they put extra security details around him. And for the first time in the history of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 8th Circuit, they set up metal detectors for oral arguments for the appeal. Now, again, how, fear being such a brain thinking, interfering kind of thing, it makes us stop thinking. We just want to, our fight and flight stuff kicks in. So whether it was at the trial, whether it was pre-trial, whether it was on the appeal, everything was designed to not allow for the reality, for the truth to come out, for it to be a fair and an honest proceeding. The Peltier case is an example of why we should be terrified unless dramatic changes are made. And anyone who might think that Obama was going to lead us or Biden was going to lead us in a good direction, Obama increased the domestic national security apparatus dramatically. And Biden is going to be following in his footsteps. And so, we need to wake up, people. We need to do what we can to support this man who's in prison, who may never get to hug his children and his grandchildren or his great-grandchildren. But we also need to think about the fundamental changes that we need to make in our criminal justice system and our political system, because we got a lot of crises. And land back is one of them, enforcement of treaty rights is one of them, protection of the earth is another, and the indigenous community is leading the fight to protect the earth. And interestingly enough, during this time period, the FBI in their documents, when they called in 1974 the FBI, the early 75, AIM as the most dangerous organization in the country, the principal thing they noted was that AIM was shifting its emphasis towards stopping destructive mining going on in indigenous lands. And it suddenly makes sense. What we didn't know in the 1970s was there were 23 multinational corporations that had come into this area in the Black Hills and had claimed the whole area for uranium mining and gold and coal and silver and iron. This was going to be a national sacrifice area. There was one problem. There were too many Indians in the way. And they had this treaty. And later there was a Supreme Court decision that the land here was stolen by the United States government. That's all Leonard and other people were really talking about. Enforce the treaty rights, respect us as human beings, allow us to live our lives and to thrive in our culture. So where can Leonard really go? When they pushed his parole release date from 2013, and based really upon the same stuff, then suddenly switched to 2042, 43, it was clear that the government, as they said in that parole document, we got somebody, got a Native American, we know a Native American killed the agents, and we're going to keep him. And that, I think, really is what they have decided to do for this man. And it's horrific. And it is important that people in this country understand. They may not have heard of Leonard Peltier. They may not have heard about a lot of these incidents or things that went on. But maybe they should look and they should study, because we're talking really about what our ability to protest, our ability to exercise our rights to free speech, we're talking about our ability to assemble to seek redress of grievances. We're talking about our ability to have our Fifth and Sixth Amendment constitutional rights to due process and a fair trial. There's a lot of lessons here, but we need to, and Leonard Peltier's case is that, and I would just repeat it, it's a classic example of what we may face when we speak up. And the more of us that speak up, the less of us that will suffer that fate.
All right. Thank you for that. That is Bruce Ellison. A lot of you I know have heard of Bruce Ellison. You heard his take on the ongoing campaign for clemency for Leonard Peltier. And tonight we have very special guests in the house with us. Our team was able to set up a mobile studio in Washington, D.C. to commemorate the 46th anniversary, the 46th memorial of the shootout at Wounded Knee, for which Leonard Peltier is still doing our time. He is the victim of political imprisonment. Hold up here. Change it to, oh yeah, my bad. Sorry for that little pause there, but we had to get something figured out. If you could be here in the studio with us, and in order to do that, you're going to have to subscribe to the Leonard Peltier podcast, because our team is also shooting everything that we've got going in the studio and otherwise. And we all came to Washington, D.C. Those from the Freedom Ride 2021, the Leonard Peltier Freedom Riders, those from the International Leonard Peltier Defense Committee, and that includes its new executive director, Carol Gokee. That also includes a senior member of the board of directors and a survivor of the shootout in 1975 in Oglala, known as the incident at Oglala. She was there. Her name is Jean Roach, and it's my honor and privilege just to be able to do my part to make sure that Leonard Peltier's clemency is not ignored, to make sure that those who are in those places who can make those decisions know that he is a human being, that he deserves to go home. So it's my honor, and I want to give you each an opportunity to introduce yourselves, and maybe we'll start there, and then we'll take it from there. But please introduce yourselves and tell us what you do.
I'm Carol Gokee. I'm the new director for the International Leonard Peltier Defense Committee, and I promote awareness to the public to educate them on why Leonard is in prison and why it is our main goal to get him out of prison. We work with as many congressmen as we can and legal staff to do what we need to find the right thing, the right trick to get him home.
Jean?
Good evening. My name is Jean Roach. I'm from the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe. I live in Rapid City. I work with a bunch of women, and we've been doing the COVID release for the meals for relatives. I work on the housing board. They're trying to develop. I'm doing like a lot of stuff, but one of my main goals in life has been fighting for Leonard Peltier's freedom. We all heard the words of Judge Sharp, and I've known that for years. I've attended both the trials of Butler Robidoux and the Fargo trial. Between those two different court cases.
Jean, could you kind of take us back to that day, June 26th, 1975? It's something that a lot of people in my generation, I was born in 1978. I was born on the shoulders of those who gave those sacrifices. And we find ourselves in those same struggles today. But could you kind of just tell us what it was like and what events led to you eventually escaping that shootout?
Seemed like a regular day. I mean, we were teenagers. I was 14 years old. We were having fun cooking. I mean, that was a new thing for me. We were having sweat lodges. We helped Grandma and Grandpa jumping bull, put in a garden. I mean, we were doing all sorts of stuff, horseback riding, just hanging out. And it was really a learning experience. My mother was friends with Leonard Peltier. That's how me and my little brother were there during the shootout, and he was 11 years old. So most of us that were there on the day of the shootout that escaped were all under the age of 18, except for Leonard and Dino and Bob and maybe Neelock. So there was 3 women there, and we just happened to be, I mean, it didn't really feel as serious as it really was to me, but when you start having the bullets flying beside you, and it just like became reality. But I guess we had always, being a member of the American Indian movement, our family, we're used to being attacked. I mean, not used to it, but it happened a lot. So it was more or less the law of the gun on the Pine Ridge Reservation, and you never knew or who was attacking. It could have been the BIA, it could have been the goon squads. You just didn't know. So when the gunshots went off that day, we didn't know who it was. We always expected the worst because Leonard Peltier, the guys were more the security when they were having like ceremonies or the grandmas needed something. That's why they were there. So we just recently celebrated the grandma and grandpa's 50th anniversary. We had a big powwow. It was really, I mean, it was a lot of life-changing stuff there. You know, I was raised in Rapid City where racism hit us right in the face like almost every day. And then coming down there, you know, I was learning a whole new lifestyle. So it was really fun. When the shootout happened, afterwards we met up with Leonard. He gave me and my brother the choice, you know, I'm sorry this happened. We didn't mean for this to happen. You guys just put your hands up and walk up the hill. And most of us decided, we had a decision, are you going to go or are you going to stay? The only one that couldn't really make a decision was my brother. So he gave himself up. And as soon as he hit the top of the hill, we couldn't tell if he, you know, they all shot at him. I mean,
Holy.
and then we didn't know until like maybe midnight if he was going to survive or if he's dead or alive. So, and he was only 11 years old.
He was 11 years old
Yeah.
and they were shooting at him.
Oh, yeah. They didn't care. And they never have. They've killed a lot of people. I mean, like I said, we live by the law of the gun. And if you didn't have one, then most likely you won't survive. But people walking that had long hair, anybody to be known to be associated with American Indian Movement members were targets. People were beaten. I mean, it was just really a tough time, especially after Wounded Knee. The goons, the guardians of the Oglala Nation, were backed by United States funding. So they had all the latest weapons, you know, automatic weapons, and it made them like they were king of the hill, and everybody had to bow down to them. That's the way they acted. And so I had a really, really close sister that was killed, ran over, and you know, to this day, we've never had no justice. And a lot of friends, their family members, it's just like, I don't know, we survived it. We've been surviving. You know, it's been, you know, since I've had grandparents that were killed in the Battle of Greasy Grass. And one of our grandmothers survived the Wounded Knee Massacre. So like we're always forever. I didn't really realize why I had this negative attitude on non-Native people, and it's probably what they call historical, because I'm not sure, maybe they've seen, I know my grandmother's seen everybody massacred. That's deep in our bloodlines. It's hard to imagine seeing your whole family, you know, being massacred in front of you. And so another thing that that we did on that day was learning reality, you know, the way that we were described in the press as 30 well-armed militants. They made it seem like we were the ones that caused all the trouble, but we were just people. And everybody had a different image of the FBI. But what I had seen is nothing but like breaking into people's homes without warrants, because nobody wanted to talk to them, no one. And so they were pretty mad, but they were scared. You know, they were really scared of the Native people, because they would not camp out like, let's say, in Oglala, and people were telling us that they were having, you know, ceremonies and were protecting us, and the FBI and the cops would see, you know, stuff out in the, you know, after dark, so they were scared. So we had a lot of, like, every time we were, when we escaped and we were wandering around in Pine Ridge in the middle there was always a storm circled us all the time, every night. So it was just like the only time we could show ourselves, because we were being hunted, you know. We didn't have clean water, you know. I tasted water that tasted like cow manure, you know.
Right.
So we had some hard times, but we still stood strong because we knew we weren't in the wrong. And as I got older, I started understanding the story of COINTELPRO and how they used people to manipulate the American Indian movement. And, Leonard Peltier was a target. Anybody really that tried to help your people became a target. So, breaking down the stereotypes, that are built up, especially around Leonard now, even, they built this image based on probably 1970 news, Of course, they probably used the 1880 versions too, Kill the Indian. We still feel that.
They did that at Standing Rock. They just took
yes.
the same playbook. These are violent, unruly, lawless Indians,
Same
and
thing.
and you should fear them. But hearing you talk about what life was like on the Pine Ridge in the 70s, nobody knows that. People, we have tried to just forget about that.
Mhm.
We've not told our story. We've not created media. We've not written our own books about that because the wounds are just too fresh.
Oh, yeah.
We're still living with the same people who know who did the killing.
Oh, yeah.
So it's going to take a long time for us to begin to heal, but we can't run from the truth.
Oh,
we
yeah.
just can't, and neither can the United States. They know that Leonard should not be locked up
Oh, yeah.
to this day. And so, Carol, I wanted to ask you, what is your sense? How long have you been in the job as executive director, and are you able to make contact with Leonard Peltier on a regular basis? And how's he doing? How are his spirits?
Okay. I've been the executive director for probably since March. Leonard asked me to join the committee back in October. He made me co-director back in December. Basically because for years Leonard said people basically told him what to do all the time. He needed somebody that would listen to what he wanted. And he said, I've got 45 years experience with this, and I think I know good enough. So I want somebody to work with me. So I became his personal assistant. And because of that, we speak when he's not in lockdown. We speak on a regular basis, daily. Emails, mail, whatever. He's got a lot to say. He wants to make sure that I have all the information I need to do my job. He's been able to give me a lot of help. A lot of people, a lot of great supporters that are dedicated to absolutely whatever they can possibly do to help him. And so I have been able to see him. They opened up visitation in January. I think I've been able to see him maybe 4 times.
Okay. What is the status on his transfer, and what is his health like?
Yeah, his health isn't looking good right now. It's deteriorating. He is diabetic. They are feeding him a pretty much peanut butter and bread diet. We've been logging his food intake for quite some time now. When I do visit him, I do a little physical exam with him. So I check to make sure he's not swelling.
Yeah.
Because of diabetes, you can have a lot of different symptoms of things that can tell you what's going on. So he's not given the opportunity to go to the doctor right now. He has got a burning sensation in his prostate, which could be an infection or it could be cancer.
Wow.
He has an aortic aneurysm, which could rupture any day. And there is a treatment that you can take for that to dissolve that aneurysm. So he could have that and not have to worry about that. I think his grandfather or dad had an aneurysm too. It's genetic. Let's see what else. He's blind in one eye. He has not gotten any help with teeth. He can't hear very well. He needs both knees replaced. He's got problems with his shoulders. They routinely shake down the elderly unit for whatever reason they choose, and they go in and take his property. Last time they went in and took his blanket. He freezes. It's about 50 degrees in there. It's
I remember how
freezing
cold it is in there.
And even when he talks to me on the phone, he's got a blower that blows down on him just to make it worse. But he don't care. He goes right up there. He says, I'll stand in line for a half hour to talk to somebody. I'm not going to, he needs that connection.
Yep.
So I when visitation was restarted at the prison, I says, you whenever you want me down there, I'll be there. And I come from Wisconsin. I go every 2 weeks to see him. Sometimes I'll stay in Florida a little bit, but right now his transfer, that's a funny thing, but he is eligible for transfer. He was moved down to Coleman because of a 10-year hit that he received because of his bunkmate who was digging in the wall and exposed a wire, apparently wanted to use it for an antenna. Leonard wasn't even aware of it. The bunkmate got moved and the guard went up to change the bed and got poked and said he got electrocuted. So they made a very big deal of it. They tried to put Leonard in the hole for, I don't remember how long that was. It was a long time. And then they were able to get a confession from the bunkmate, and he said it was me that exposed it. But because Leonard didn't tell them, he didn't know what was going on, so he
Right.
couldn't have told them. He got a 10-year hit in his Supermax, which is Coleman Penitentiary. They don't have enough staff. He's been pretty much on lockdown for almost 10 years. He's
Wow.
lucky he gets out here and there to talk.
So Coleman is not a regular USP. It
No,
is a
It's a
supermax.
Supermax.
I did not know that. So it's akin to Florence or other
Yep.
high security prisons where and Leonard is an elder.
Yes.
He is 76 years old. He's about to be 77. And hearing you speak about these health deficiencies, not only is Leonard suffering political imprisonment for 44 years, 45 years, but there are health conditions that he could be getting help with.
That's right.
He could be living a better quality of life if he was not in prison. That's one of the major reasons that we have been calling for clemency, but the demand for clemency, the need for clemency becomes more urgent as the days go on. So, Gene, I want to give you an opportunity. Thank you for telling us how things were that day. It's very important that our listeners understand that these aren't just things in a book.
Mhm.
These aren't just things that, I started to kind of inform myself when I was a teenager. I started reading. And so I tried to read everything I could about our struggle, our people, as indigenous people and as Lakota people. I tried to just inform myself of everything that was, where were we at? What was the status check on our struggle for liberation and sovereignty? So hearing you tell these stories is very, very important. So I want to give you an opportunity to maybe share how your advocacy has taken shape and maybe changed forms over the years, because I'm sure you've been involved in this since that time.
Yeah.
Nobody can forget that.
Yeah. Well, I think mine started like, I think when American Indian movement first went to South Dakota, when they were right before the Custer riots, people were just like being abused and, same story, different time. Native people always get treated the worst, and same thing. And Rapid City hasn't changed that much at all. So back then, my mother was a victim. She had her leg broken by an owner of a bar. And that's why we went there. She was in a cast all the way up to her thigh and took us all in there as kids. And well, I was probably about maybe 11 or something. But anyway, and she must have knew about it. I just seen Dennis Banks, all them in the front, checking them out, The drum was there, you better learn that song. That's the AIM song. So we were told by our mother to, we learned from her, I guess, from her being abused, what kind of changes can be made. Then we attended the AIM school, the We Will Remember AIM school, and that was like a lot of education in life. Not so much the academics, but that's not really the purpose of survival. And so I think that when a lot of people don't get to understand the part about when the battle of the Greasy Grass happened, all the way up to the Wounded Knee massacre, how things all came to different places, like with Sitting Bull
Right.
Then you have the mini koju, and it was just a sad story. And we never learned that from our school or people. We had to learn that putting pieces together and the oral histories. So I've always had that in mind. When I went back to college, I planned to go to the New Mexico, University of New Mexico Law School, but I decided I don't want to write a paper forever. I have too much things going on, and that's all they do.
Yeah.
And I just I've seen a lot of changes, but until he's free, I mean, you heard the facts of the case. We were not bad people.
Mhm.
We were just like taking care of grandma and grandpa, helping the community who was actually trying to pull away from the tribal government in Pine Ridge under Dick Wilson.
Mhm.
That's what that community of Oglala wanted to do, and that's why they asked for security. Real simple. And that's why Leonard and them were there, security. I mean, you couldn't even have a sweat lodge or any other ceremony without being attacked. So we were up against, finding ourselves again. I was not raised on a reservation, so it was all new to me. But I met a lot of people, and every time we come to DC, different people come, and we brought up people this time from Wounded Knee, and they've been really strong supporters. And I just like to give a shout out to Michael, who brought the bus, Rudell. I mean, there's a crew,
Yeah.
and Fry Bread.
I can't believe Michael is driving that bus in DC. This bus, you guys, you got to see this bus. And shout out to the brothers. We'll get a credit later, but somebody in Taos, New Mexico, donated a bus to the crew that journeyed all the way from Wounded Knee, South Dakota, made it all the way to Washington, D.C. And I get anxiety just looking at that bus. And I'm asking myself, has Michael ever driven a bus before? Like, I don't know.
This is their third time that they've done it. It's Los Rios. I mean, I'm like, don't bring that bus named
Los Rios. That's right.
Yeah, and I never met him, but I just thought that was so awesome.
Los Rios Rafting Company,
Yeah.
Taos, New Mexico. Shout out, like for real,
Yeah.
because of their generous donation. And by the way, look up Peltier HQ, the International Leonard Peltier Defense Committee, and Jean Roach. Just look her up personally on Facebook. I know that she's active on Facebook. You heard about some of the activities that her and others like Natalie Stites and Muffy Musso, Felipe De Leon, others who I don't know. I don't want to start naming people because I might leave someone out. But they stepped up to the plate. Candy Brings Plenty. They stepped up to the plate in Rapid City to keep elders and people alive. During COVID, they were feeding the people, which is a very necessary and noble obligation for people who are Lakota or who are good relatives. That's what that means, to be Lakota or Dakota, just to be a good relative. But Carol Gokee, Executive Director of the International Leonard Peltier Defense Committee, and Jean Roach, Senior Board Member for the International ILPDC, and also a survivor of the 1975 shootout, sometimes called Incident at Oglala. You should check out Robert Redford's film by the same name. And I can't remember who did Warrior, but that is another very good film.
Susie Bear.
Susie Bear.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Gene. That's why you're on this show. Susie Bear did another film called Warrior. Please check that out. John Fusco based Thunderheart. That's when I'm saying that we haven't begun to tell our own stories yet as Lakota people, because we still all live together. And the truth is very hard. People have been murdered. People have been raped. People know who did those atrocities to their own people. But I hold COINTELPRO more responsible for what happened there, because I too want our nation to heal. I want our people to be able to come together, even though that seems like the hardest thing in the world. And it is even before the white people got here. we were having squabbles within our own selves, within our people. And we have got to come together because Leonard Peltier is depending on us. They targeted him the same way they targeted Red Fawn Fellis and everyone else during the Standing Rock No DAPL movement. Everybody who suffers political imprisonment, political prosecution, everybody who stands up to the financial extractive complex. Everyone gets targeted. You just heard Gene say it was dangerous. We were being hunted. If you walked around with long hair, or if you took dignity and pride in who you were as an indigenous person, you were attacked for that. We live in a different time. In 1978, the American Indian Religious Freedom Act was passed. Every tribal nation in our continent is in a better place because of Leonard Peltier's sacrifice, because of everybody who stood up during that time. And we owe it to each other to continue to share these truths. This is a session on Leonard Peltier. We are sharing the stories and contextualizing why we have come and congregated in the capital of the United States. Again, if you missed it, I want to thank the horse riders, Freedom Ride 2021. They came a couple thousand miles from Macy, Nebraska. Julie Fike, or Fikey? Fike. Julie Fike. I was able to meet some of the horse riders today. I stumbled upon them in some synchronistic kismet. You know, I went out to clear my head for this session because I wanted people to hear who Leonard Peltier is. There's nobody in my age group who can tell the story that Gene tells. There's nobody who speaks with Leonard on a more regular basis than Carol Gokee. So that's who we have with us tonight. And I want to give either of you an opportunity to maybe add what your thoughts are now. Being on the ground here this morning, we were able to become part of the Remove the Stain campaign, right by the National Museum of the American Indian. Yesterday, Carol Gokee weaseled us onto the stage that Bernie Sanders had just spoken at, a CASA function, a CASA direct action calling for a path to citizenship. Like, these women are doing the work on the ground. And typical man, I'm over here blabbing my mouth on the microphones, on the podcast, on the webcast. But I want to thank you all for paying attention because I can't tell this story. So I want to give you guys each an opportunity to maybe there's something you forgot, maybe there's something that made you think of something different. But this has been a very meaningful time on the ground here. And I want to thank you for giving yourself to this cause.
We'll continue to do that. I want to mention that we talked briefly about the transfer. That 10-year hit has exhausted, and the Bureau of Prisons came your time, 10 years is up, we're going to transfer you. Where do you want to go? Leonard told him where he wanted to go. He wants to get closer to his family, and he's been waiting ever since for that movement. They're dragging their heels. His health is getting worse. He actually has spots on his lungs too. I did miss that. We don't know what those spots are. They could be diabetic, sugar. We don't know. We don't know the progression, but we're here in Washington to make sure all of our congressmen and women know that the BOP is dragging their heels on this transfer that he's eligible for. They put in for him. They cannot deny it. His time has been served at the Supermax prison, and we need everybody to contact the BOP and put the flame underneath them to get him moved. We cannot deal with his medical while he's in Coleman. It's very necessary, and that's why we're here. And we're going to continue to fight to get him moved and then get him home after that.
Thank you for that. And thank you for getting us on that stage, or almost on the main stage.
We did good, didn't we?
We did. You know what? The spirits are helping this work. There are a lot of things, if you pay attention, that happen that let us know that we are being guided, we are being protected and directed. And we have jobs to do, we have roles to fill, and we all do. Each and every one of you listening right now, you could have been anywhere on Mother Earth tonight, and you are tuned in right now to cut to the chase. So thank you for that. Thank you for sharing the stream. Thank you for subscribing to the podcast, because these are going to be long sessions. We are going to do a dive into the campaign for Leonard Peltier's clemency. He is not going to be in there forever. We cannot allow that. We just can't live with that. So, Gene, I want to give you an opportunity to maybe you missed something. Just give us your thoughts on how the last few days have been in DC.
It's been a trip.
To say the least.
By the time I figure out where I'm at, then it's time to go, you know. But it was pretty interesting, the people that we've been meeting. Sharice, her aide, called us back about an hour ago. So we're hoping that we get more support, you know.
What?
Why not? Why not more support?
Keely,
We had 40 at one time, I think, you know, way back in the 80s, signed on to
55.
support him. 55 members of Congress.
Nobody should be afraid of this. You're absolutely
Yeah,
right. Sharice
yeah.
Davids is the lone Native woman on in the House of Congress.
Yeah.
Nancy Pelosi has called for Leonard's clemency.
Yes.
You know what I mean? The late Senator Daniel Inouye.
Yeah.
Deb Haaland has
Mhm.
called for Leonard's clemency. Raul Grijalva. Nobody should be afraid of this.
Yeah.
We're in a situation where I can feel something shifting.
Yeah, you know, breaking down the genocide needs us to break down the walls of colonization. Okay, so we're just like, if we're gonna have change, we have to have justice for Peltier, because that case is a remnant of a time period where we're treated like,
It's a stain.
yeah, it's like a
Stain on
stain. It's like
history.
remove the stain. I mean, they documented their own mistakes. I mean, their cover-ups. Everything's documented by them. We don't have to say nothing, but anybody that wants to look, they can look it up. You know, we have archives on our website, who is leonardpeltier.info. We have court transcripts. I mean, we have a lot of information and a lot of proof. We have letters from all kinds of people around the world. But why is he still in there? There's one organization holding him back. But we as the people can be stronger. We can unite more. I mean, let's just take a moment to get this elder out of prison. Oh my God, it's just like, why does he have to suffer beyond? He did his time, you know, no matter what. He did time. He did like 5 or 6 life sentences compared to the 1970s guidelines of life sentences. But they just keep on holding him back, you know, but we continue. That's one of the reasons why we have to continue, because this story is not going to change of how we've been treated for generations, really. So part of breaking down and decolonization requires us to get our political prisoners out of prison.
So for those who might not have read My Life is My Sundance, and thank you to people who are in the comment section. When you share the stream, when you comment, we see it and we do appreciate it. If you might not have had the time or the leisure to learn about who Leonard Peltier is. When we mentioned those congressional representatives in the House of Congress and in the Senate, not to mention who've supported clemency for Leonard, not to mention the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu, but all the National Congress of American Indians has also called for clemency. But what we need is organizations like NIGA, the National Indian Gaming Association, the Native American Housing Council that is in DC. All the DC natives, do not forget about Leonard Peltier, because Leonard is doing our time. Leonard is in a supermax federal prison every single day. wondering what we are doing for him, what Gene Roach is doing for him, what Carol Gokee is doing for him, what I'm doing for him. Like when I visited Leonard, there's nothing that has changed my life and made me acutely aware of the gravity of that situation. It is cold in that prison. It's cold in the visiting rooms. And Leonard lights up when he knows there are people on the outside who care about him, who know who he is as a grandfather, as a father, as somebody's son. Leonard was also in a boarding school. And I want to give Carol an opportunity. Maybe there's details about Leonard's life that we might not know about. Whatever I could read in My Life is My Sundance, in the spirit of Crazy Horse, whatever I could glean from the Warrior film, also Incident at Oglala, you heard Gene Roach say that they tried to portray Leonard in a certain way, but if you talk to the people that knew him, he is somebody who will give the shirt off his back. He wants to help his people. And it's heavy. It is a heavy situation that we find ourselves in. It takes courage for people like Kevin Sharp to join the campaign for clemency, because this means there are people who want to keep the truth hidden, who are going to take objection to the work that we're doing. But we don't have a choice. We were born into this. We don't have a choice but to tell the truth, because the truth is always going to come to light. They have been hiding it for 46 years. And we are now in a position to unearth those truths. And it's so heavy that Leonard was also in boarding school. I did not know that, but I want to give Carol an opportunity to add to the conversation.
Yes, Leonard was taken from his grandparents at the age of 9. His little sister Betty Ann was 6, I believe. Pauline was 7 when they were taken and ripped away from their grandparents, much like all the stories we're hearing about now. And the children, we're finding more and more children. I think we're up to almost 700 children now that are getting unearthed at these boarding schools. Leonard's a survivor of those schools. And Leonard made it his mission at the age of 13 to become a resistor. He formed a little gang of boys that were going to resist the government and resist what they were doing to them and taking children away from their parents. If anybody, you just imagine right now somebody coming to your door and ripping your child out of your arms, and then that child not coming home. Just losing a child to a car accident or cancer is hard and devastating, but to have somebody physically take that child away and you can't do anything about it. You can't get your child back. You don't even know where they went. You hope and pray every day that that child comes home, and you live your whole life in depression. And maybe drugs, maybe alcohol came about because of it. Because what will did you have to live when your children were taken away from you? And now 50 years later, 70 years later, we're finding their bodies because of the government and the Catholics. This is not acceptable. And Leonard became who he is today because of that boarding school. He made it his life's mission to help Indigenous people across America. He's done so many things. He's worked with women who just got out of prison, helped them relocate. He's done AODA counseling. He had an auto mechanic shop in which he went bankrupt because he fixed people's cars for free. Pretty much gave it away because it was more important for him to have them in a car and make it to work every day. He fought racism on a constant basis. And he told me one time, he says, I says, Leonard, when you get out, should we buy you some new clothes? You can get some new clothes. He says, I've never owned any clothes. I've owned no more than 2 shirts and a pair of pants my whole life. It was more important to make sure my family and friends had clothes than me. That's who Leonard Peltier is. He's a good, kind man. He's been nominated for 7 Nobel Peace Prizes and soon to be nominated for an 8th. I do homeless outreach. I was doing that before I joined the committee, but when Leonard found out about it, he was like, oh my gosh, we need to get you a bigger car. Because I bring it from Wisconsin all the way to South Dakota, wherever they need it.
Right.
If somebody needs food, I'll bring it. I'll do a food drive. I've done clothing drives for them because the same things and the same values he has are in my heart as well. To teach them how to garden. These people were stripped from the time they went in. They were stripped of everything. In an effort to take the native out of the native, they took the heart and the soul out of these children. Is what they did. And the ones that did survive didn't come out the same. Can you imagine how they came out? They couldn't speak their language. We can't just leave it at that. They couldn't do anything. They couldn't provide for themselves. They didn't know how to garden. They did not know how to live off the land. And that was one thing. When Leonard found out that they needed protection, he also wanted to help them learn how to be self-sustainable. And I'd like to tell you the little story about the tractor. He wanted to till the earth for them and show them how to garden. So they didn't have anything to till the ground with, so they took a horse plow and attached it to, were you there when that happened? I don't know if you were there or not, I don't remember.
To the car?
To the car. And they had to go back and forth. And they had to really maneuver that thing.
They attached a horse-drawn tiller to a car.
Yes. And they worked hard, really hard, and it probably took them all day long, but they got that ground tilled. That was what was important to Leonard, was to take care of those people and teach them what the government tried to strip away from them. You know, assimilation that's what's happening at immigration right now on the board. It's the same thing. They're taking these children away from their families. It's assimilation and the same, just a different kind of wording. You know, we stood with them yesterday, and they were proud to have us stand with them, and we were proud to stand with them as well. You know, if we could get Bernie Sanders' attention a little bit better, that was good, but we got a flyer in the window.
I couldn't even believe that happened. It happened because Carol and Brother Duck, you know, Don Long Soldier, part of the crew that came out from Pine Ridge, even from the West Coast. You guys made the approach. And you know what? There happened to be a supporter, a young woman whose father was a supporter of Leonard Peltier. She was working in the organization that was hosting this huge event. And we just happened to be in the same place at the same time. When we talk about synchronicity, things line up, and I'm grateful for that. You heard Carol talk about what is going on in Leonard's life right now. You need to follow Peltier HQ, Peltier headquarters, Peltier HQ. Carol is the new executive director of the International Leonard Peltier Defense Committee. Find Jean Roach on Facebook, follow her. They are out here on a moccasin string budget. Follow Leonard_pod. We'll get all these in the links. You need to link with the people who are doing all the work behind the scenes. I'm sort of in a position where every week I get to come on camera and spend some time with you all and ask you to share the stream and ask you to subscribe to Cut to the Chase podcast. But that's part of the work that I'm doing. That's part of the job that is mine, that I realize I have a platform. Whether I want it or not, there's things I've done that have catapulted me into this place where people respect our word, respect my word, because I've worked very hard for it for 10 straight years. And we're just now, I feel like I haven't done enough for Leonard Peltier, because when you visit him, it's different. It's different to call for his freedom and to be supportive of our struggle. But when you visit him, you realize that he is a human being. That he somehow, against all odds to break his spirit, has kept that hope alive. He has not let that die. So we would be remiss to not mention Leonard, to not continue to advocate for his clemency. I have kept these power women in the studio as long as I said I'd keep them, but I want to give you an opportunity, if there's anything you missed, to make some closing comments.
excuse me, I think that I'd like to recognize that this isn't my first trip to DC. We've been here several times. We always meet great supporters here. I mean, I just like to remember the ones that have came here. There's a lot of them that have been members of our committee that are no longer here. We have Steve Robidoux, one of his sons, Toppy, showed up, which is really nice, and just bring back some great memories. Last time I was here, we lost Leonard's son, Waha, so it was kind of sad to come back, but realizing that so many of our relatives have gone, not only the ones that we've lost over the years, but that whole generation seems to be,
No more reason to fight.
losing them. But
Yeah.
and tomorrow we're having our big celebration. The Oglala Sioux Tribal President Kevin Killer has made June 26th proclamation, Leonard Peltier Day on the Pioneer Indian Reservation. They sent us with a resolution from the Tribal Council, along with the Cheyenne River Sioux, Tribal President Harold Frazier wrote us a support letter. And we have some other ones that I haven't seen yet, but we would like other tribes, every tribal organization, we need support letters.
How?
Yeah. If you own an Indian business or you're just a regular person, you're important. Your letter is important also. We need to get as many letters that we can to support his release on all levels, international, national, tribal, It's a big world, so we got to depend on our supporters to get this done. So if you have a connection with your council, please use it and send us copies to whoisleonardpeltier.info. And I'd like to tell everybody, thank you for being there and supporting Leonard for as long as you've been. I mean, it's like lifetime commitments that I've seen. And every person that's been part of the committee, they have a great respect for. And I'd like to thank you, Chase, and the crew for helping us, get this message out.
Mhm.
And we're not the best speakers, but we just speak from the heart.
We're trying to back you up. It's
Thank
hard
you.
to keep track of you guys' movements. It really is. So thank you for working with us too.
Yeah.
We are going to be wrapping up this week with a vigil tomorrow in the northeast quadrant of the grounds next to the Smithsonian Indian Museum from 9 to 1. We have, hopefully the Navajo Nation will be coming with us. We have all of our supporters. We have the bus of grandmothers and Jean and her crew, and we're hoping the horses show up. Again, hit and miss sometimes on that, but I'm pretty sure they'll be there tomorrow. And then we have some music coming and just a lot of awareness. And we've also got another venue there who has invited us to come and
Wow.
you share the stage like Bernie
Okay.
said.
See?
Bigger stage too. This one's a lot bigger. So yay.
Yeah, things just roll into place.
They
It's really
absolutely
cool.
do.
It's very strange.
Yeah, right before you guys did the CASA thing, we just got kicked off the others.
We did.
Yeah,
Yes,
they came over and
Officer
kicked us
Torres.
off.
And he
So
kicked
we're
us
just
off
like,
that
what's going
stage
on?
too, technically, but that's okay. We had the ground. We had more room for all of us to get up there, take the drum and pray, and they all joined in, and it was great.
Yeah, we
It was
had the
great.
White House thing
Oh,
today.
we did the White
right?
House today.
Caught that on the live feed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Wow.
fun.
It was pretty, well, we had people come out of the White House, but
Yeah.
we don't know what that means.
Well,
They've done that before
They
too.
came up for a photo op, but the police, I'm not gonna lie, they were awesome.
They're
Ever since
on
we
high
got
guard because of what happened with Trump's radical
here-
fringe.
Right.
They're on high guard, but the country is shifting. They now know that indigenous peoples are not the enemy.
That's right.
Mhm.
We are not the terrorists. We've been trying to save this country
That's right.
for the longest time. So again, I want to say Lila Wopila Tonka, Chimagwich, Wado, OCO, and all of it in between. You guys are welcome to stick around, but I'm going to spend a little time closing out the show. But I just thank you so much. And again, Gene Roach, senior board member at Peltier HQ. Please look that up. follow it, link with it. Leonard Peltier Defense Committee, the International Leonard Peltier Defense Committee. Their tag or their handle is @Peltier HQ. Carol Gokee, the new executive director, we look forward to linking with you. We look forward to working together and getting Leonard on this side
That's right.
of those walls. That's our job, and that's our concern. So thank you very much, and we will speak again.
Thank you.
Thank you. So there you have that. That is, again, please look them up. There are certain things that you have to link with in order to follow the struggle for Leonard Peltier's clemency. One of them is @Peltier HQ. Another one is Leonard_POD for podcast. Leonard_POD on Instagram, on Twitter, and also @Peltier HQ. We've got to help build them up, got to help lift them up, because we are in a fight for Leonard's life. That is not an understatement. You heard from Gene Roach and from Carol all of the background stories that humanize, that contextualize Leonard Peltier. We cannot allow him to be forgotten, and we simply will not. I have some film. You heard Gene and Carol both talk about their days in Washington, D.C. And if you're in Washington, D.C., and I know Apasanaquat is around here somewhere, AP, also Jay Nightwolf, also Uptown Boyz, the drum group, people who are in D.C., we're going to be on the mall tomorrow by the National Museum of the American Indian. And what was that time again?
9 to 1.
From 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. So please stop by, show your support, maybe grab a T-shirt. You saw that Free Leonard Peltier flag in the background. There are T-shirts, and you can support Leonard Peltier's freedom, because this is how the organizing is done. But I want to roll in a little clip that our team has put together to show you what's happening on the ground in Washington, D.C. Control, if we can get that, please. Leonard is still a living testament to that sacrifice, and it's just time that he's done sacrificing. He doesn't need to be in there. He never needed to be in there. They knew it. We all knew it, that they don't know what happened that day, but they needed to pin it on somebody who was as effective as Leonard.
Who could deflect from what they did, because he's in there because of their wrongdoings. They were the ones that started this. Leonard only went there to help. You guys know about the horse-drawn plow, don't you?
No.
Oh my gosh, when he got there, they wanted to. He was dealing with a lot of other people who were survivors of the boarding school.
Yeah.
They'd had all that stripped out of them. They didn't know how to garden. They didn't know how to take care of themselves, how to sustain without government help. So that was the main thing, well, to protect them, but to teach them, to make sure that they knew how to take care of themselves. So they didn't have the tools to till a garden, so they found an old horse-drawn plow, attached it to the back of a car, and went back and forth. And he said it was hard because you couldn't turn it. So they were struggling, but they did it. They did it. And that's what he did, was educate people and try to lead them down the right path of sobriety.
Right.
And to just get them to feel a bit of self-esteem that was taken from them. He started a little group when he was 13 called the Resistors. I don't know if you heard about that.
I did not.
He did, because they wanted to make sure that they helped all children that went to the boarding schools, all people. That was where Leonard wanted to start when he was 13. And he did. He did. We know of all the things in Seattle. We know of the auto mechanic shop that he had, and he couldn't make $1 off of it because he gave everything away, because that's who Leonard is. He told me a couple months ago, he says, we were talking about clothes. I says, when you get out, I says, I'll buy you a bunch of clothes and stuff. He goes, you know, I've never owned more than 2 outfits my whole life.
Wow.
He says it was more important that everybody else had clothes, because that's who Leonard Peltier is. He's a man of integrity and honesty, and he would do anything for his people and to help them recover from what the United States government attempted to assimilate out of them. And we back that. 200,000% we back that. And so hopefully we will see change with our government. I hope we've got a great administration.
We've got
I'm
an
gonna say.
opportunity right
Yes,
now.
absolutely.
We just lived through an existential threat, all of us, a collective
absolutely.
threat on how we see ourselves, how we spend our time, what we value. I think it's a wake-up call. And we don't need to wait. That's my position now. Why do we wait until the end of the presidency?
That's right.
They need to know now that Leonard needs to be set free. I'm also with you in that we need to go and be present at the Department of the Interior, in the U.S. Congress, at the Supreme Court. They need to hear Leonard Peltier's name.
That's right. And not forget it.
Yes.
Until those doors open and he comes out. Because enough is enough.
I'd like to introduce everybody. This is the president of the Oglala Sioux Tribe, Kevin Killer. And they just recently passed a resolution in support of Leonard Peltier's freedom. And he's also made a proclamation on June 26th to be Leonard Peltier Day. But I'll let him explain that.
Wapila Jane, Elmdakiapi, Maka, Ikilia, Hime, Chante, Washington, Nape, Chuzapilo. Again, I shake your hand with a warm and good heart. You know, my Lakota name is Close to Earth. My English name is Kevin Killer. You know, I appreciate all of you for being here, especially riding the bus. I know that the bus actually stopped in Wounded Knee and picked up some of our constituents from Wounded Knee. So, you know, thank you for making that effort, and thank you for continuing the fight. You know, definitely, you know, I'm out here in support of both Leonard Peltier, but also Remove the Stain Act. And, you know, our relatives from Wounded Knee know firsthand about both of those issues, especially as we remove the stain, because, you know, we're out here trying to gain support to, you know, for the Wounded Knee, we're sending the medals of honor that were awarded to the soldiers at the Wounded Knee massacre. And, you know, and it just happens to coincide with also Leonard Peltier Day. I've always been a supporter of, you know, clemency for Mr. Peltier. It's always been, you know, injustice, making sure that we, you know, keep fighting that, because that's something that we're continually moving on. I know my Aunt Eileen Janice asked me to be out here, so I'm definitely honoring her wishes and making sure that she's there, and, you know, we're always representative. And, you know, being in office, you know, I think we're just a continuation of what our parents, our grandparents kind of struggled for and fought for.
We, the indigenous nations, the indigenous peoples, Pueblo Indígenas, support a pathway to citizenship. We know that there are no illegals on stolen land. On stolen land. We also know that this is our country. Este es nuestro país. This is our country. We've been here for millions of years. We all come from the land. We come from sacred Mother Earth, who is waiting for us, who is calling for us in a time of climate change to wake up. And we know we can do this together. Si se puede. Si se puede. We come here in support of clemency and freedom for one of the United States political prisoners. They try to keep him quiet, they try to push him under the rug, but we cannot let him be ignored. He's listening right now from a federal prison. His name is Leonard Peltier. And his struggle is our struggle. We are all in this together, and we need to take ownership of this country. We are not a racist country that has no place in this land. This is our land. And we must all stand together or we all fall together. Thank you for giving us this time. My relatives, thank you. Madakuye Oyase.
Again, I want to thank CASA. I want to thank the organizers of that event who just met us that day. And by some stroke of grace, they had a father that is a Leonard Peltier supporter. So we were able to join their event. It was amazing. It's kismet is the only way I could describe it. I don't know how we ended up in that situation, but it happened. I want to thank you all for sticking with us. That is 2 hours, just over 2 hours, taking you through a journey about Leonard Peltier. There are people to thank. There are folks that are doing this work all the time. They are tirelessly advocating for Leonard Peltier's clemency. That includes Gene Roach, that includes Carol Gokee, that also includes Sheridan Murphy, it includes Kevin Sharp, former judge Kevin Sharp, who joined us earlier on the stream. It includes every one of you in the comment sections who've said that they contacted their member of Congress and said, I'm not voting for you unless you free Leonard Peltier. We need to let them know that they have cover, that this is something that we support. Just like Juneteenth became a holiday, because you know what? President Biden knows that the Afro-American vote, the Black community, put him over the top. It was very, very close, and Biden needed the indigenous vote to put him in office, but we cannot let them sit here in DC and continue with business as usual. Now, I didn't get to show you how Congresswoman Sharice Davids and Congress Rep from Hawaii, Ka'i Kahele, how they are calling for the medals of honor to be rescinded that were given out for that conduct at Wounded Knee. And I want to thank Four Directions, O.J. Siemens. I want to thank President Kevin Killer for doing that work, and everybody else, Manny Ironhawk, Marcella LeBeau. I mean, there were people on hand today, and I'm very grateful to have shared space with them. But we are going to reserve, you're going to have to tune in to Cut to the Chase next week. And hopefully we can do it on Wednesday, because we have other unannounced news that we're waiting to share with you. So turn on notifications, subscribe to our podcast, follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. Last Real Indians even has a TikTok. Bet you didn't know that. My son created it. Shout out to my son who created us a TikTok. I don't post on there, but we'll get to that. And so I also want to thank, again, Leonard Peltier Podcast. Last night, they took us out to dinner because we're working all day. We're trying to keep up with Gene Roach. We're trying to keep up with the Freedom Riders. We're trying to keep up with Carol Gokee. They're moving all the time. So we are very, very hungry. It was late at night. For some reason, all the restaurants are closing at 8 o'clock, 8:30. And we found a halal grill called Sakina Halal Grill. It's right next to the Eaton on 12th and K Street. And we go in there and they kind of like, they let us know that, hey, we're about to be closing. We don't want you guys in here, at the end of the night type of thing. I was part of the wait staff before. I know exactly what's going on there. So we're like, oh, that's cool. We'll sit outside. We're down to sit outside. They sat us outside. Waiter came out, super friendly, chatted us up, asked what we were doing out here. We told him about Leonard Peltier. We told him why we were here, that Leonard Peltier had brought us to the nation's capital. And it just so happened that all these other things were going on. And he came back when it was time to leave, because we were sitting outside and they had closed down the shop and they were closing out their till. And he asked one of our team members, his name is Andrew, who got us that night. And Andrew gave him the credit card to pay for the meal. He says, no, don't worry about it. I'll come back out with a machine. I got a machine. And then he makes a comment about how maybe the meal might be free. And it was right after we told him about Leonard Peltier. So in my mind, I don't remember the brother's name, but the Sakina Halal Grill fed us last night because of Leonard Peltier. So there is support all over this city. People are yearning to be educated. Again, shout out to Chairman Harold Frazier as well. They sent a letter calling for Leonard's clemency. Those efforts need to translate to contacting our senators and our congressional reps directly, asking them to urge President Biden to do the right thing and free Leonard Peltier. For all of us, as we know, there can be no healing, no conciliation, no reconciliation unless the truth is shared. And you've heard the truth tonight. And I want to thank Kevin Sharp, I want to thank Gene Roach and Carol Gokee for giving that to you, for giving that to us. This is extremely important that we're able to share these truths. And I thank you for sharing the stream. I thank you for subscribing. I want to thank Lakota People's Law Project. I want to thank Last Real Indians. This is not possible unless several organizations work together. And we will continue to do that. We will continue to bring that truth and bring that fire. Again, I want to thank you for tuning in. Lila Wopila Tonka, Chichapalo. This is Cut to the Chase, a special edition, our 21st episode. We couldn't do this work without your support. So in a genuine way, thank you. And we are out.